Well, your insights are coming in about friendships because of my next guest who's just walked into the studio. He realised he lacked male friends when he needed to ask someone to be his best man at his wedding and didn't have any men around him. 2019, a YouGov study was done which found that 1 in 5 men have no close friends, twice the proportion than for women. A similar poll from the Movember Foundation found that every man in 3 has no close friends, and when close was defined as someone they could talk to about health or money worries, that rose to 1 in 2. What pressure does that put on, of course, the men, but also the women in these men's lives, and what tools can men learn from female bonds to help maintain their friendships? Max Dickins is the Billy No Mates in question, comedian and playwright. The book is called Billy No Mates, How I Realised Men Have a Friendship Problem. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a real double-edged sword being the face of having no friends, I've got to say, but I'll take on the mantle, why not?
Your book was sent to me and I enjoyed putting it on the bedside table of my husband. Nice look. Yeah, he has had a good look at it. I think he slightly objected to a sign which basically said Billy No Mates. We've got some messages coming in about this already, as you may imagine. A lot of people got strong views on friendships, but there's one from Trevor that I wanted to share with you. We do have a lot of male listeners. It says, your question, because I asked about how women can help and the sort of pressures there. Your question is based on the assumption that people need friends. I have never felt the need to have friends. I would be surprised if I was unique in this view. What do you say to Trevor?
Well, Trevor's right. I mean, loneliness is not an objective thing. It's a subjective thing. Are you happy with your social world or are you not? So that's entirely up to you. If you look at the research, introverts tend to need or want less friends than extroverts. So it's entirely up to you. But I think a lot of men do want more friends and are maybe keeping quiet about the fact that they don't have enough. But Trevor, I completely hear you.
What you realised you had a problem after you proposed. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I went to a jeweller's in Hatton Garden with a female friend of mine, and she said afterwards, when we were having a glass of wine, who are you going to have as best man? And my mind went blank, went home that night, got a piece of paper out and a pen, made a list of the candidates I consider, and I realised I work with most of these men, and the rest of them I haven't spoken to in some cases for 1, 2, 3 years. And I thought, oh my gosh, where have all my friends gone? And then when I did a bit of light Googling, I realised tons of men have this problem. And in fact, since they started measuring this stuff, social scientists in the early 70s, men have had less friends, especially less close friends than women. And it gets worse as men get older, to the point that if you look at bereavement, if you look at divorce, if you look at retirement, men suffer worse mental and physical health outcomes than women because of that isolation. So this stuff compounds over time.
What did you do about it?
Well, there are loads of things I tried to do, but essentially the first thing I tried to do was become open to having close friends rather than just mates, right? So a lot of that was about overcoming maybe some of the rules I'd inherited about how I go about being a man in order to actually access close friendships. So I used to have all my friendships defined entirely through the prism of humour and banter, and then that would sort of put this moat of aggression around me. I tried to communicate affection to friends, to tell them I like them for a change, try to be vulnerable, these things. But also that was maybe one angle. The other angle I looked at is trying to consider maybe what are differences between male and female friendship. And when you understand that, you start doing slightly different things. So I spoke to the world expert on friendship, is a guy called Dr. Robin Dunbar. He's an evolutionary anthropologist. And he said to me, essentially, female friendships, and this is a generalisation, tend to be face-to-face, based around talk. There's quite a lot of emotional disclosure. Women will often say they have one best friend that they often know more closely often than their romantic partner. Men's friendships tend to be side-by-side, based around sharing activities together and often in groups. So if you want to keep your friendships going as you get older, and you turn 30, 40, 50, it's about making sure you keep those activities, those structures in your life where male friendship tends to thrive. So a real simple thing I did, for one example, was I started running a five-a-side football league fortnightly and organised that, and we went to the pub afterwards. A real simple thing made a massive difference.
And were you aware also that can sometimes happen in relationships, and I'm saying here, of course, in heterosexual relationships, that a lot of the social work was being done in your life by your female partner?
Yeah, absolutely. So Naomi's probably listening to this, and I probably lent on her a lot. So I think men often treat the women in their lives as like the HR department. They sort of organise the friendships. Men will rely on their partner for their social group. I heard a great line from a stand-up called John Mulaney this weekend. He said, men don't have friends. They have wives who have friends who have husbands. And I think it's often because we're not socialised to do that social work, that work of checking in with people, organising meetups, sending cards, all that small bits of effort that go into maintaining and creating bonds. I think we're less socialised to do. And I certainly reflected on that in myself. And I know it's true of a lot of my male friends as well.
Yeah, well, there's a message here from Janie who says, I've been married 23 years to a very genial and friendly man. However, he has no friends. He's lost touch with his best friend from childhood, and many others over the years. He gets all his social needs met at work, an extensive and international busy network of male colleagues. He openly admits he prefers his male relationships to be based around a shared purpose, to your point. Yeah. He has no interest in sharing his emotional or personal life with other men. He happily engages in social events I organise, rubs along nicely with my friends' partners, but he has no interest in investing any further. It would be taxing and draining for him. My only conclusion is that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. How the hell this will work as we approach impending retirement remains to be seen. I'll be in touch again soon. That's a promise from Jane. But there are quite a few women getting in touch saying they are worried about this. So that, women are worrying about all sorts of other things. They're quite angry a lot of the time about other things, but they're also taking this on. Do you think it is something that men need to take more responsibility for?
Absolutely. They need to own their social world a lot more. So they often rely on hubs, so like their workplace, as we just had in that example there, their wife, the Rotary Club up the road. They need to take responsibility for it. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. I spoke to someone in researching this book who he had great male friendships, and I said to him, what's your secret? He says, well, my friends call me the Sherpa. As in like those people that carry everything up the mountain for everyone. And they said, because you organise everything, but if you didn't organise everything, we'd never get together. So I thought it was a great way to think about it. Be the Sherpa. The best way to have a friend is be a friend. It's pretty simple stuff, but generally men don't put the effort in. We sit in this holding pattern with our male friends, waiting for the other person to make the move, or just rely, as we've explored, on our partner's social world. And this puts a lot of pressure, I think, not only in terms of organising everything, but if men don't have avenues to talk about the bigger stuff, to talk about things maybe they're less likely to share with their partner, or even just to share the burden. I think it's important men have these relationships because, again, it's just another inequity in male and female.
Although, again, there's more messages to Trevor's point, who talked about, my other half doesn't seem to want them or need them. Lucy says, have you considered the fact many men might not actually want them? My husband prefers not to have any. As a woman, I've never had really close female friends. I don't feel I've missed out. I'm very self-sufficient. I find females quite shallow, annoying and a bit cloying, says Lucy, listening. But, we sort of covered the fact that you can accept that, although perhaps there's an argument there to say, why has that become the norm and why is that a view? Because we also know how much this can affect men in a good way if they change their mind or get something to change their mind, if something opens them up. But I wanted to read you this from someone who just describes themselves as M, who says, thank you for covering this topic, because it's slightly different. I'm a husband and father of 2 children. I'd love to maintain more male friends, but I'm too busy. My work isn't too bad, but I have to do so much aside from that. Parenting, housework, husbanding, I think much more is expected of men compared to previous generations. While there's much that is good in this, it does make it hard to keep up friendships in any meaningful way. And added to this, my few close friends are dispersed around the UK. I don't have a group. Forming one doesn't work because we all just have too much to do. I'm not in a great place. My marriage is touch and go, and I just don't have time to go to the pub. I don't really see it getting any better.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And look, one of the hardest things with friendships as you get older is the availability of time, and that affects both women and men, but clearly it's very difficult to do it. It's especially difficult for men, I think, if your relationships are more time intensive in terms of sharing activities, going to the pub. So there's no one great solution there. If I had any advice, it would be, can you fit in some meetings that are much shorter around sharing coffees or sharing cups of tea, phone calls, in order to fit things into your schedule a lot better. But it definitely is harder. And I think to kind of talk to something it's been coming in on the messages is maybe we think of close friendship, for want of a better phrase, in quite female terms these days. It's about emotional disclosure and intimacy looking as it being about talk, whereas a lot of male intimacy is based around, it's a very active form of intimacy. And I think we can sometimes ignore close male friendship that is there, but is maybe not shown up in some of these bits of research you shared at the beginning of our conversation today. So I think it's important to notice it when it's there, as well as wanting to improve conversations.
I want to bust a myth, if I may, which is that it's really hard to meet up with people, in this day and age. It can be, especially if you're at that point of your life where you're doing lots of different things, if you have got children. And I sometimes feel, it's like trying to piece together a map with your friends. And I have seen some of the men in my life just give up. If the first time they try and bring together a group or more than one person just doesn't, we can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like peace negotiations sometimes with my friends, trying to get everybody in, not that it has to be a big group. I'm not somebody who has a big group. I'm often in 2s and 3s.
Yeah.
But you do just have to persevere. There's a sort of understanding on that. Have you found that as a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. And men can be quite hard work when organising stuff, I've certainly learned. If I had 3 rules when I was going through this, it was show up when you're asked, go first when you're not, and keep going even when it's hard. And I think that's really important. I should say, though, that friendship is harder than it's ever been. I think the world is not built for friendship anymore because of this lack of time, because of so much is mediated through social media, digital world, consuming content, however you want to phrase that. So we have less and less of a landing spot for our friendships. And there used to be what sociologists call third spaces. So a work is one space, home is another. There's a lot of third spaces, whether that be a church or a coffee shop or a gym or a park, where we get together and socialising was easy and we go in groups and we meet people. Those places have disappeared, or we're showing up to them less, and therefore it's a lot more pressure on us to do the organising and for people to reciprocate. So in a sense, it's no wonder it's so hard.
Did you end up with a male best man? Not that you have to have a man, but it was your realisation?
The twist in the tale, Emma, is I had 2 best women instead. And I've fixed and mended loads of my male friendships, and I could have chosen a best man, but authentically, my 2 best friends in the whole world are 2 women called Philippa and Hope. And so they took on the mantle on the day, and they did a great job.
Of course they did.
Yeah, and I'm very glad they were there.
I don't doubt that. Yeah. Are they still your friend, even though you've got this book out, Billy No Mates?
Yeah, they're still my friend. I mean, maybe the title...
They don't feel devalued that you haven't got any friends that certainly are men, is it?
No, well, I tell them a lot, but if they're listening now, Philippa and Hope, love you lots.
Well, I'm sure we're going to get many more messages on this. It does seem to have struck a chord, as I'm sure you're finding as you talk about this. The book is called, to give it its full title, Billy No Mates, How I Realised Men Have a Friendship Problem. Max Dickins, thank you very much for coming on. And I should say, of course, with some of your messages talking about the more very serious ramifications of some men not having friends, help and support is available via the BBC Action Line website, which you can look up. There's a message here, M, just in response to that message about very difficult trying to fit everything in, has just described the situation for most working mothers, but it doesn't stop us having and relying on close friends, says Jay, as a bit of advice there. Regarding male friendships, bring back working men's clubs. I belong to a club. I drop in. I see people when I have time and share experiences with other guys, says Rob, who's listening in Dorset. When you're young and you have male friends, once you start a relationship, you slowly lose your own friends and take on the friends of your partner. Then you get divorced and you find you have no friends of your own once again. What about gay men's friendships? My best friend is gay. He maintains a large circle of close friends. Perhaps examining the differences between heterosexual and gay men's approaches to friendships could provide some insight, says Alice. Thank you very much for all those messages. I will come back to them as I can, but plenty coming in.